Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. Al-Billah Shaitan Rajim. May God protect us from the cursed one and unnecessary ignorance. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. Rabbi Gfirli. My Lord, forgive me for all the sins I'm conscious and unconscious of. Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim. May God guide us to the direct path. So, hello, everyone. Welcome to welcome to this evening's lecture. I was fascinated by an idea, and I needed the help of AI because there was a question I wanted to ask AI. And recently, I have been fascinated by what the limitations of intelligence is. And I thought how fascinating is this idea that we as humans may be having emotions that we don't understand. And I thought maybe AI could notice things. And so I'm gonna read the first part of the lecture is reading um, the response of AI to this question, and then I'm gonna comment on it. But the whole point of it is that it's very difficult to comment on it simply simply because, guys, I think it's audible, right? Simply because see, there's a challenge to it because it's the hidden emotions that humans can't understand. That means we as human beings, to be honest, I first came to write the name of the title in some sense. Why do human beings choose novelty over logic? Like I had a lot of ideas on that. But then I thought, my vibe kind of changed. And I thought how fascinating that there could be hidden emotions we have, but we don't understand why notice these patterns. Okay. So I'm gonna read this, okay? So I will see. Okay, sorry folks, just one second. So here it is. Okay. This is what AI says about it. And the question is primarily something that it's very difficult for the human being to answer because it's in the blind spot. Okay. So, and guys, maybe this is a cool thing to do, but whoever you are listening, just write something in the chat section. So it's kind of like your thing. I can, it's kind of listening. Anyways, hidden emotions, what humans feel but rarely understand. And I have changed the music. This is not the music that is perfect for this. The music that is perfect for this is this, yeah, this song by this guy. All right, guys, we're going classical. We're going classical now, you know? All right. Classical music, I mean. Okay. In the name of God, I'm going to read for you what AI thinks are hidden emotions that humans rarely understand. So, hidden emotions, what humans feel but rarely understand. As human beings, we often believe we know what we feel, Joy, anger, sadness, love. These seem clear enough, but beneath these visible emotional layers are complex emotional states. Guys, I'm going to read this as if I'm going crazy. But beneath these visible emotional layers are complex emotional states that often go unnoticed, misinterpreted, or misattributed. From the perspective of an advanced analytical system or even a highly trained psychologist, these, in quotations, hidden emotions reveal a deeper emotional architecture at work. And so AI says here are 15 emotional states that most people experience without fully understanding them, along with what they really mean. So, first emotion, preemptive grief. What it is, grieving something before it happens. How it showed up, how it shows up, sudden mood drops or emotional distance from loved ones, even when nothing has happened yet. Why it matters. It's your mind trying to emotionally prepare for potential loss, but you don't realize that's what it's doing. So, guys, a hidden emotion could be preemptive grief. I think since like I don't know, maybe like 10, 20 years ago, I've had preemptive grief for mortality. So that's what it was. So, anyways, I'm gonna keep going. So preemptive grief, the first one. Second emotion, hidden emotion, compensatory joy, misplaced euphoria. What it is, unusual joy during or after a crisis. How it shows up, laughing during chaos, feeling overly optimistic about failure, after failure. Why it matters. This is the mind's emergency defense system to keep you from emotional collapse. So compensatory joy. So it's an unusual joy during or after a crisis. How it shows up, laughing during chaos, feeling overly optimistic after failure. Why it matters. This is the mind's emergency defense system to keep you from emotional collapse. So it's kind of like the mind notices, I guess. You know, yeah. The mind is in distress, like it under pressure, and to itself, it brings an unusual joy because it considers that the outcome. Then we go to inherited emotion, transgenerational echo. What it is, emotional patterns passed down from previous generations. How it shows up, feeling deep anxiety, sadness, or fear without any clear personal reason. No way. So everybody has transgenerational. What is inherited emotion? Why it matters. These feelings may belong to your lineage, not your current life, and need acknowledgement, not dismissal. Guys, I think I'm okay. While I'm still at the beginning, I'm gonna ask this. Give an example. Okay, guys. So I'm asking it really. I'm asking it to fix the prompt. So what am I saying? I'm asking. I'm asking it to. I mean, that's a good idea. I never thought about that. But I'm asking. I'm asking ChatGPT to um, add some more information to this, and then I'm gonna read it. Okay. So I'm gonna read it from the beginning, I guess. So preemptive grief scenario: a mother begins to feel sad and distant as her child prepares to leave for college, even though the event is months away. Philosophy: this is the mind. Oh my God! No, hold on, folks. I feel like I need a deeper song for this, a song that has a bit of, you know, eeriness to it. Okay, there we go. This fits. All right, all right, all right. Back to it, folks. Back to it. The answer's loaded. I'm going to read it. So we're looking into 15. AI is giving us 15 examples of emotions that human beings have, but they don't understand that they have these emotions. And we need something outside to the human experience to kind of, notice patterns and tell us. Okay. And now I'm reading the updated answer of that from the beginning again. Preemptive grief. Definition: grieving a loss before it happens. Scenario: a woman in her 30s grows emotionally distant from her aging father, not knowing why. She later realizes it was a subconscious attempt to prepare for his death. Wow. Philosophical insight: the human mind, aware of time's fragility, tries to shield itself from heartbreak by grieving in advance. This is a tragic effort at emotional control. Awareness result: if noticed, it invites conscious presence with loved ones. We shift from emotional withdrawal to tender engagement. Guys, this happened to my uncles um, on my mother's side, who I am not very fond of, but it happened to them. They didn't even come to my grandfather's funeral, even when he was getting sick. They wouldn't even come and see him often, right? And yeah, this kind of explains the preemptive grief I guess they were going through, but it still doesn't justify them not being there. Anyways, compensatory joy, misplaced euphoria. Definition: artificial bursts of joy to avoid psychological breakdown. Maybe this fits me. Scenario: a man loses his job and suddenly becomes unusually cheerful, making wild jokes and planning spontaneous trips. Philosophical insight: this is the soul's emergency exit from despair, a paradoxical instinct to protect identity through joy. Awareness result: recognizing this joy as survival based allows real processing of pain underneath, leading to healing rather than emotional denial. Yeah, yeah. There's some things that, I think every human being has this, but there are some things that we're escaping and we try to escape it. That means it's like we're trying to convince. It's like, imagine we know something, we know the intensity of the something, but the personality is acting as if that intensity didn't happen. It's trying to, in some sense, deny the emotion, the reality of the emotion. And we as human beings don't need to freaking be in a utopia, like of kind of like looping in an artificial happiness. We have to be real in reality. And some of the most fascinating people you will meet in your life are those people who have experienced reality in a way where they have been activated. That means they find the freedom through the experiential understanding of it. A lot of the things that I did not allow myself personally to be free when I was younger, it was all about, how do I explain it to you? It's as if I didn't experientially understand, and the emotion was based on a limited perception of reality, you know. But anyways, now so the second one was compensatory joy. The first one was preemptive grief. And the viewers can listen to this and let me know if you've had an experience of this or not, or have you noticed this emotion? Maybe you're advanced. Then we go to three: inherited emotion, transgenerational echo. Definition: feelings passed from ancestors, not personal experience. Scenario: a girl feels intense fear every time she hears sirens, though she's never experienced trauma. Her grandmother lived through war. Okay, whoa. So, yeah, guys, there could be emotions that are not our own. So do not think that you're just an emotional being. Don't let emotions just rule your life. Emotions are very important in life, because they point to a deeper awareness of reality, a deeper consideration than just the linear analysis of it. Okay. So here it says: philosophical insight. The soul carries echoes of stories untold. Emotions can be stored in family systems like ancestral memory. Awareness result. Understanding this breaks cycles of confusion and begins generational healing. Then we go to mortal vertigo. So vertigo means a sensation of whirling and loss of balance associated particularly with looking down from a great height or caused by disease. Okay. So moral vertigo definition: emotional dizziness from internal ethical conflict. Scenario: a young employee is asked to lie on behalf of their boss. They feel nauseous, disoriented, and can't sleep, yet can't explain why. Philosophical insight: when the inner compass collides with external survival demands, the psyche destabilizes. All right, nice. Welcome, guys. Thanks for the kind words. It is your kindness that is helping me advance humanity. But kindness is a key element. It's part of, and how do I say it? The more intelligent you become, the less violent resolutions you need. Anyways, um, so yeah, okay. So I'm gonna read it. Awareness results. Seeing this clearly empowers one to make soul-aligned choices, even in high-pressure systems. So yeah, that means when your inner life's ethics and values don't align with what you do in the outer. Okay. Then we go to 5, unacknowledged awe, like AWE. I'm not just making a noise. Unacknowledged awe. Definition: emotional response to beauty or truth too vast to understand. Scenario: someone hears a piece of music and unexpectedly cries, not knowing why. Philosophical insight: awe bypasses logic and touches the mystery. It reminds the soul of its place in the cosmic order. Awareness result: instead of dismissing these moments, honoring awe can reconnect us to the sacred, the sublime, and true humility. So I guess this is something I'm very familiar with. To me, that beauty or truth too vast to understand would happen through states of, I guess, realization. And the something I would say here to you about realization is that the whole point of realization is that there's something here before you and you're noticing it. So for me, I would say the idea of the advanced civilization, you don't know. Like, I talk about these simply, but when these ideas emerged for me, and especially civilization 2.0 or some of the stuff I would write in my science fiction, you know, um, I would feel this emotion as if, like, how do I say it? Sometimes when I give these talks, even, I find myself as if I've walked into an uncharted territory, as if, like, perhaps maybe no one has, you know, at least to me, it feels novel, and I don't have the whole experience of the species. But sometimes I feel my like when I talk, my mind's walking into places it's never been before, into states it's never been before. Okay, but there's a fascination to just the magnificence of this whole system. Okay. So anyways, unacknowledged awe, acknowledge your awe, folks. If, like, there might be a lot of stuff that's awesome to you, but you don't even acknowledge it. For example, this podcast. No, I'm kidding. Oh man. Disowned hatred. 6. Definition: repressed anger redirected inward. Scenario: a man constantly apologizes, avoids confrontation, and blames himself for everything, while silently resenting everyone around him. So I guess it says repressed anger redirected inward. A man constantly apologizes, avoids confrontation, and blames himself for everything while silently resenting everyone around him. Ah, yeah. Okay, it says philosophical insight. Hatred is not evil. When owned consciously, it becomes power. When repressed, it poisons identity. Yeah, it's I honestly can identify with this. And I gave a talk literally yesterday, and I said how when I was younger, in certain modes of mind, I had a hatred for humanity, but it wasn't a hatred for humanity, or what I understood later on. It was, how do I say it? It was as if I couldn't be my I couldn't simply be myself, and so it was as if I couldn't understand why, and I thought it was the environment fault, but it was actually my own lack of awareness. Anyways, it says awareness result: integrating anger through healthy boundaries allows wholeness and authentic strength. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't know like how healthy this is, but I think it depends on like the person's expectations on reality, and our expectations on reality are not just logical. Sometimes they're emotional. Like you expect to feel a certain way, and then when something doesn't let you feel that, it kind of like, anyways, we move on to the next one. Shadow envy. Definition: envy projected onto others who reflect our repressed potential. Scenario: a woman feels annoyed by a friend who travels freely and follows her passions. Philosophical insight: the pain isn't about the other's freedom, it's the inner betrayal of one's own unlived life. That's what a next level sentence. The inner betrayal of one's own unlived life. Yeah. People are like, yeah, are you going to say more about this? Like, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I think everybody, as we go to more, like as we go forward in time into the future, well, obviously we get to notice way more ways of living, and we feel way more unlived ways of living. Do you know? Like back, like a couple, like 100 years ago, like the person just wanted to start a family, have kids, live a very natural like life. Now it's like the person wants to be a trillionaire. Like being the perfect couple, and in some sense just like they're all traveling around the world, kind of like, who said it? I saw this video. It was like the billionaire's assistant was saying something like, "Yeah, man, the billionaire you flew to Morocco just to eat a shawarma and come back." Do you know what I mean? Like they've reached, like there's human beings right now that they've reached levels where I honestly feel. See, the thing is, power becomes numb to its own value. Do you know? Um, Especially if there's expectations of it ever growing. It's very difficult because it's kind of like saying, let's say, being rich, like, I don't know, Elon Musk or something. It's like grades. Like it's like, imagine someone with a certain financial, like I'm seeing a spectrum here, like a staircase. Okay, and it's like, at what point in this infinite staircase is it enough? Right? At some point you begin to realize the values you receive from reality are a sort of game of your own mind. Anyways, it says philosophical insight: the pain isn't, I read that, the pain is, I'll read it again, the pain isn't about the other's freedom, it's the inner betrayal of one's own unlived life. Oh my god, these, sorry guys, there's flies in the car. It's cold outside and it's moving into summer. Okay, anyways, and a little cold. I, anyways, let me focus. So it says awareness results when seen. Envy becomes a map, not a trap. It points us toward what we're meant to reclaim, but not in some sense. Let me say it this way: if you've ever felt envious, you have to wonder about how you have betrayed yourself. There is this thing I remember. Um, Pretty much the idea is that when you look at human beings in this world, each human being you see has a value, and they also have a value system, and they're also valuing reality in accordance to past, present, future. But how do I say it? There are human beings on this planet that instead of raising themselves from where they are, they assume that it's easier to make others less. I'll give you an example. Someone has a problem, okay, and someone goes up to them and they're like, "Hey man, you got a problem." Like someone honest, sincerely, no bad intentions. They go up to that person and they say, "You have a problem." Imagine that person, instead of acknowledging their own problem, like to see the reality of it and update themselves, instead they're like, "No, you think I have a problem, you're worse than me. Even that other person is worse than me. All you guys judging me are all wrong. Do you know you're even worse than me?" So do you understand what I'm giving you an example? I'm giving you an example of how a person can reduce others to feel superior, or a person can rise truly beyond their limitations, and then it's like an earned superiority. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. Be careful. There's some human beings, they need to reduce others values to feel valuable, and then there are those who their value, first of all, doesn't just come from the outer realms, from in front of their eyes, but from others. But in some sense their value, they kind of they're trying to surpass their own limits. Sometimes in life, when you compete with others, you lose your authenticity. I understood this, that at some point I have to go on my own climb on the mountain, right? And what that means is that you got to figure this out for yourself. And there is no greater teacher than that feeling. The feeling that something is going on, I'm capable to know it. What is it though? You know? We go on to the next emotion: spiritual homesickness. Looking for a reality beyond the material world. I legit talked about this yet, like an hour ago. So, spiritual homesickness. Definition. So, guys, we're reading hidden emotions that AI notices that humans have, but they never understand. So, spiritual homesickness, the eighth emotion. Definition: longing for a reality beyond the material world. Scenario: a successful entrepreneur often feels empty during celebrations. Looking at the stars, he feels a strange longing he can't name. Philosophical insight: humans carry an echo of the transcendent, a memory of the eternal. Awareness results: acknowledging this homesickness opens a path towards spiritual practices, stillness, and deeper purpose. I think that homesickness, I something humorous I've said in other talks was that I felt like I was born, what's it called? I felt I was born 400 years too soon. Okay. And I don't know why I have an affinity for the mecha age, which comes after the cyberspace era. Okay. But right now, I'm born before the when the cyberspace era is being pioneered. Okay. But sometimes you just, like sometimes wanting to be somewhere else than where you are can add to the misery. So, sometimes, like, the human mind has such a complexity that you could feel you completely belong to another world, and that could be true, and that feeling can be justified by, but it doesn't answer why are you here now, right? So, regardless of the emotions I've had of a nostalgia of the future, you know, that means, this might sound strange, but when I'm, at least in my inner realms, when I give talks and I talk about the advanced civilization, it doesn't feel unfamiliar. But I don't know how it could be familiar in this life. Maybe my subconscious formulated a lot of the ideas I share before, in my youth or something. They're kind of like stored somewhere. And anyways, okay, okay, okay. So, anyways, I read that. We go to the next one: chrono emotional lag. Definition: emotional delay between event and response. Scenario: a woman doesn't cry during her divorce but breaks down 2 months later while folding laundry. Philosophical insight: emotions are not bound to the timeline of events, they follow the rhythm of the unconscious. Awareness result: knowing this lets us stop judging our emotions as late or inappropriate. It normalizes nonlinear healing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That means you might go through an experience, and at the time, you just did something and went through the moment, and the moment passed. But it's like at the same time, the intensity of understanding what happened in that moment may come like maybe months later, years later, you know it might even come at moments where, I'll give you an example. Imagine like somebody like back in the day, you know imagine you're a guy, okay, you're male, you're born in this world, and they tell you that, emotions, like, there's no need to show emotions, okay, and there's a reason they say that, why it's important for men to not get too emotional. I think the reason is because life is way more intense, and emotions blindside us, like, um, blindside us. What I mean is that, yes, it is important to share emotions. You can, like, I'm telling you, I'm someone who, um, for many years I was shy and kind of trapped in myself. Okay. Now, this I never acknowledged, and I normalized. I pretty much normalized that my own emotions don't matter, right? And then years later, I was like, why am I a little savage? Why am I not? Do you know like, do you know what I'm saying? Right? And then there was a moment where I suddenly realized I felt, bad about, like, I felt like some part of me felt stupid. Do you know? Excuse me, let me rephrase it. Some part of me felt foolish, of not allowing myself to be free in the world when I was young. Okay. Anyways, I want to keep going, guys. So I read this. Actually, we go to the next one. So, chrono emotional lag. That means you may not understand why, like, months from now, you suddenly get emotional or you break down, but something happened. Okay. I'll give you an example. Right in last year, I got hit by a car while I was crossing the road, and somehow I came out of it unscathed. And for the first, maybe like the first 2 weeks, every night I would sleep, I would just see the car not stopping. It was terrifying, actually. I would have these jolts, right? And then some time passed, the emotions went away, but there came a time where I, in my mind, replayed the scenario, and I kind of broke down because you could think you're the strongest person, you could think you're the greatest alpha male, and then a freaking car hits you and you realize you're a fragile human being in a world that is very somehow preserved. Do you understand? That means you become spiritual if you're trying to be powerful. When you realize you are not powerful, you actually become religious, because you realize that man is not here to be just a powerful being. Do you know? We are here to comprehend the nature of what is the most advanced state, what is the most advanced thing for us to pay attention to here in this world. Okay. And anyways, guys, I want to go to the next one. 10, cognitive dissonance, guilt. Definition: guilt that arises from living against your own values before you're conscious of it. Okay, so I legit just explained cognitive dissonance. Guys, I think my eyes are seeing the page, and before I'm consciously reading it, I'm subconsciously reading it. But, anyways, so cognitive dissonance guilt, maybe that's a better term for it. Maybe I was explaining the other one. I mean, chrono emotional lag is just saying that you might, like at the time, you might not have an emotion, but then later on, you have an emotion, and you have an emotional avalanche or something. To be aware of it, kind of, it doesn't make you judge why you had the emotion late or something. It's okay. It's okay that it takes time for certain things to be processed in the human experience. There's been situations where I've said something to someone, and just like maybe like 10 minutes or 15 minutes later, the actual great thing I could have said to them came to my mind, but at the time it didn't, for example. you know Anyways, so cognitive dissonance guilt scenario: a man is outwardly successful but becomes suddenly irritable and withdrawn after signing a morally questionable contract. I think this happened to George Lucas when he signed for Disney, but I'm just, that was video I saw on YouTube. But it does happen, you know, that when a person doesn't feel, in control of their lives, it's like it could make the moment feel meaningless. Sometimes emotions come to scenarios that are very logical and there doesn't need to be emotions. And sometimes we're logical in scenarios where we need to be emotionally conscious. We need to be aware of how the emotion is influencing how the ideas are even linking or connecting, or where it's all going. For example, when I talk about the advanced civilization, which is one of the most important ideas on the surface of the earth, okay, for humans, right? It's as if, for me, what I'll be honest, what has been motivating me to give these lectures has been this emotion, which simply, I think, if I was to linguistically code translate it, it would be, it's as if I know that we can be better. I know that this system can function better, but it's not. And for someone who, it's like you notice you can fix something, but you don't, and it like bothers you. You know what I mean? So, anyways, I'll continue reading. Philosophical insight: the self detects betrayal before the ego admits it. This guilt is the soul's whisper. Awareness result: listening to this signal allows realignment and reconnection to integrity. So, integrity is not just about how you behave with others, or maintaining honesty or being loyal. Sometimes we say we're going to do things and we don't. And if we try to do a lot of things and we don't continue it, do you know what I mean? It's like the judgment falls on yourself. Man himself, like, I could technically remember so many situations in the past that could have gone better and just feel bad about it, you know? But it's important to kind of have this attitude also, like, all right, man, I'm also a new human being in this system, living my life for the first time as a human being here. This is a new lifetime for me too, you know? So what I'm saying is sometimes you got to just treat the situation, your past, as if like, okay, man, that's the best I could do. I embarrassed myself. Okay, whatever. That was the best thing I could have done in that situation. You know, what I mean is that it doesn't mean it's the best thing that I could have actually done. It just means that was the best of my ability in the past. Okay. So awareness result, listening, I read this, but anyways, I'll read it again. Listening to the signal allows realignment and reconnection to integrity. So for me, for example, why do I talk about speciesism being more important than nationalism? You know, it's because honestly, how do I say it? It's like we are missing an honor as human species. Samurai had honor. People right now are keeping like their honor to like nationalism, but they don't get it. Some part of them knows it doesn't make sense because it's like human beings in a masquerade party, but the mask, instead of being some mask, it's the national identity. Do you understand? You got to realize human beings are, they want to make you think everything. They want to make you think that you're living just one life and you're just this physical entity, but you are actually living two lives at the same time. In the same way, you have two eyes that see the same moment. Your poetic, I shouldn't say poetically, but the soul is kind of like the awareness that sees the subjective life and the objective life at the same time. That means if I ask you who you are and you're like, I mean, you probably won't say it this way, but if you're like, this body belongs to this idea of me, so you're aware of both at the same time. Then we go to 11. The 11th hidden emotion that humans don't understand, but AI can notice: narrative dissonance. Definition: emotional discomfort when life no longer fits your identity story. Scenario: a woman gets a promotion she thought she wanted, but feels anxious and, in quotations, not herself. Philosophical insight: our life scripts can expire. Identity must evolve with experience, not resist it. Yeah. Do you know what this means? I'm going to read the awareness result. It says, when we update the narrative, we reclaim authorship of our lives and stop resisting who we're becoming. But I'll say, let me say that, I guess the MW version, right? So when it says, so guys, you right now, I don't know if you've ever noticed, I don't know if you've ever noticed people who don't act their age. I'm pretty sure people have noticed this, right? 100% in this life, you must have noticed people who don't act their age. For example, how do I say it? Um, uh, the acting your age doesn't mean your energy levels have to be set to what we believe that age should be. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's like, I don't know, you talk to, let's say, let's say you talk to, um, some lovely, um, how do I say it? You talk to some lovely, let me see, what's a good example? It's like you talk to someone, okay, and you notice that their emotions don't match their age. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that. Let me see how I can explain this. It's like, okay, so I'm in my 30s and I've talked to people around my age, but they are speaking as if they are still stuck in like 10 years ago. I don't know how to say it. It's as if they've had experiences in life, but rather than updating their identity in accordance to their new evaluation of reality, it's as if something denied doesn't allow them to change because they're too comfortable being what they are, what they were. Do you know? So this could also translate as, like, imagine you don't change your shirt. So imagine you see someone who's wearing a shirt that doesn't fit them and they're like kind of suffocating, but they don't act, but they're still wearing the shirt, and you're like, hey, rip this shirt. Do you know what I mean? It's like you don't fit it anymore. your experiences have actually shifted your awareness, to a way where you don't have to just use previous models of identity that worked. As a being, as someone who was shy and introverted, that, you know what that means, you know um I'll tell you something. Yeah, in high school, I was just quiet. I was just, I was more an observer than a participant in my life growing up. Okay. But I remember this, we had this next level philosophy teacher, Mr. Wintony. And he was also in a famous band. I forget the name, something, and Jimmy and the Pacemakers. This guy was like, I don't know, the drummer of that, I think, of that band. And he had become like a philosophy teacher, you know, in my school when I was in high school. And one day he comes into class and he was the chillest guy, and he was very overweight, but he was very chill. I would say he was one of the most psychologically free people I've ever seen. You know, I wish I can interview him. Yeah, yeah, maybe I should do that. Anyways, um, he comes and tells the whole class. I'm sorry, guys, I'm going on a tangent, but it relates. He comes into that classroom and he does an exercise that I've never seen any teacher do ever, you know. And he says, "Hey, today's exercise." He put pieces of paper on everybody's table, like like as if he cut like a printer paper into like three pieces or something, And he put those pieces of paper on every table, and then he said, "All right, students, we're gonna name." He's gonna name a person in the classroom, and everybody's gonna write something about them. Do you know what I mean? That means that person in the classroom is going to suddenly see everybody's opinion in the classroom about them. Do you know? And so when it got to me, I'll never forget. It was like swords being like it was like swords being like kind of like pushed into me from different angles. But what it was is, one of them was very intense that kind of became memorable. All the other ones I forgot, right? And it was this girl, very attractive girl. I don't know, at that time, for my mind, and she said, "He's so quiet." And in my mind, I was like, stuff was happening. There was stuff I wanted to say, but somehow I had exiled myself because I didn't feel worthy to be something. And so many children are living like this, they don't realize it. you know and they technically, you need someone to come and wake you up. In an advanced civilization, someone would come and wake you up, from that. But sometimes they don't, and it ends up happening for years, and you kind of become a deep observer, and then you end up, giving a ridiculously big podcast. you know you know Anyways, to keep going, we go to phantom identity sorrow, the next emotion. Number 12. Definition: mourning, mourning unlived versions of yourself. Whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, it's not just based on the past, guys. It's like the future. It could be like, oh man, it's like they say it's like after 100 years, I'm out of here, and I'm not gonna get to see what happens next. And it's like, what would that version of me, if it had lived more than my lifetime, be? But something cool that I don't know, that's cool about, I guess, being a podcaster, is that your voice, um like, these lectures are gonna outlive me, inshallah. May God protect them. you know and that's very fascinating. I sometimes, it's not just mourning, guys. you know it's not just phantom identity sorrow, it could also be phantom identity joy. Let me explain why. It's like you suddenly realize in the year 2070, okay, there's going to be like water levels are going to rise, and there's going to be mass migration, probably from first like the Philippines, I think. You know, I think it was the Philippines. But anyways, the water levels are going to rise. Human beings can't live on the same land. There's going to happen mass migration. Mass migration is going to bring forth cultural instability. That means it's going to be like massive enforcement. So I'll give you an example, right? For example, there was the Ukraine and Russian war, right? And they were saying like this bizarre situation where all the Ukrainian men are going to war and dying, do you know? But all the Ukrainian women are going around the world in different countries and being everywhere, do you know? I mean, war is effed up, you know, but as men, we play our part. And anyways, where I'm going with this is pretty much that it's anyways, aside from that, I'm saying it's a suggestion of migration. If this migration happens on a mass level, there's going to come called a shift in cultures. Do you know what I'm saying? And then these shifts in cultures is going to make the people of that specific culture rebel against their own governments, and it's going to lead to, like, it's like one chaotic event is going to domino, like kind of lead to more chaotic events. Okay. And that's that they say that might happen in 2070, right? And because I might not be alive then, you know, I don't want to say I feel a fandom identity joy, but I actually feel actually phantom identity sorrow. No, I actually feel sorrow. You know, it's like when it's just like you see someone with talent and potential, and that person never expresses their talent and potential. It's like you kind of feel something that should have lived didn't live, and it breaks your heart, whether it's your talent or not. Imagine Einstein never wrote that essay, or he never shared his essays on general relativity. Okay. Imagine, you know, so many people never sharing, you know, or never communicating things, you know, or Beethoven never sharing his music, just sitting alone and just playing for himself only. Nobody ever knew he existed. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes, yeah, you know, it's the sorrow of unlived lives. So, anyways, here it says definition: mourning unlived versions of yourself. Scenario: a man weeps when he sees a child playing a piano, remembering how he abandoned music as a teen. Philosophical insight: humans are haunted not just by death, but by lives unlived. Whoa. So that means you're not just scared of death, you're also scared of the life that a part of you wants to live but can't. And the whole point of an advanced civilization is to every person in an advanced, every advanced human being in an advanced civilization is going to care for everyone's blind spots. So it's going to be, it's going to shift from deactivating the human being to control it, which is civilization 1.0 now, to activating the human being and then activating everybody. You know, it's like we want to, it's like there's going to come geniuses in the future. In the same time, there's going to be chaotic chain reactions and, I guess, human psychology on the planet, on the surface of the planet. You know, there's going to geniuses who are going to come and do the opposite. You know, they're going to bring, in some sense, ordered chain reactions. You know, anyways, so philosophical insight. Humans are, I read that, awareness result. Honoring this grief allows reinvention. It's never too late to resurrect forgotten parts of the self. But you know, guys, my personal feeling is that the human soul, like the human is like a lion. Now let me explain why I'm lionizing the human. Because it's not I'm comparing it to a hyena and a lion. A hyena, if it sees like a dead carcass of an animal that it didn't hunt, it will go and eat. But a lion doesn't eat a dead carcass of an animal. It only eats what it hunts. Do you know what I'm saying? So even though you might want to resurrect forgotten parts of the self, that's kind of like a little bit like a hyena. You know, it's like your past self your past self identity wants to reactivate. But I think it's not going to work. For me, I don't know. When I think about confidence, every time I've been confident in my life, it's had that new feeling. In the same way the lion has to hunt for itself, you have to kind of like behave for yourself, not just for yourself. I'm not saying just live for yourself like a savage. I mean, I'm talking about the experience that in some sense, I'm saying that for me, what inspired me was that my mind was like, maybe no one in history has ever thought of putting the word Mr. in front of within and giving 10,000 talks. And because that was new and unique, that's what honestly motivated me. Do you know? But if someone had come and told me like years ago before I gave the talks, give 10,000 talks, I'll be like, are you crazy? Do you know? I'm saying that there was something new. It was like, just like how the lion knows. It's like in the controlled awareness of the lion, the novelty of the experience. In the same way, I guess, that's the point I'm trying to make. And guys, feel free to share your opinions and insights in the chat, and you might be able to open my eyes if I'm able to open yours. So, anyways, 13th hidden emotion that AI can notice but humans can't. It's called disguised devotion. Definition: deep love hidden beneath critique or rebellion. Scenario: a young student passionately debates and critiques his spiritual teacher, only to realize later it was rooted in longing for truth. Philosophical insight: intensity is often mistaken for rejection when it is really the force of reverence unmet. What a sentence. It's like, what are you, bro? The force of reverence unmet. Like, it's just the intensity of. No, anyways. So, yes, intensity is often mistaken for rejection. There's been people who, have, like, guys, don't think through these 10 years of giving these talks. I haven't seen like chaotic personalities engage me, you know, but later on, it seems that those chaotic personalities, like the person, sometimes a person, I'll give you an example. I don't know if it was, there was this UFC fighter on Joe Rogan, and he was explaining a situation, right? And he was saying that when he was young, there was this kid that would bully him, right? And years later, this guy became like a UFC fighter champion. And he went back to his hometown, and he saw the same kid was like some homeless person on the street. He saw his bully being like this homeless person, right? And and he is telling why he changed his behavior. He went and helped him out. Okay. But the thing I want to tell you, what he went to explain is that when he was getting bullied by that person, right? His father, like him and his father, I think, if I remember correctly, it's something like this. Okay, him and his father go to the kid's house, and then like they realize the father beats the shit out of the kid. Like, excuse my language, but they realized that the father would beat the kid for no reason. And this kid growing up in that household didn't understand another way to communicate and express himself. It's as if his young mind was like, okay, my father communicates to me like this. If that's okay, maybe it's okay for me to communicate like this to other kids, to those who are weaker than me. Do you know what I mean? So I'm saying sometimes a person may be chaotic, do you know um but maybe that's the only way they know to communicate. But still, it doesn't mean that you should break boundaries. That means chaos is sometimes, you got to treat it like it's a wild animal, because it doesn't see itself. That's really chaos. Like, I'll give you an example. Imagine somebody has a sword, right? And they put a box over their head, and this guy's just spinning around, hitting whatever, hitting the air, right? So that's like a savage person. As much as you tell them, hey, there's a box on your head, take it off and act civilized, the person's like, no, no, this is it, I'm only seeing the box, this is my reality. And they don't realize, actually, that they are actually, they, like, we are all emotional beings, and it's not that like suddenly someone is allowed to come and suddenly emotionally re-render you. Do you know what I mean? This is why human beings have boundaries, and their boundaries arise from values that are important to them. It doesn't mean just the value has to be divine or something proven or something. Sometimes something is important and it shouldn't be touched. Do you know? Like, for example, the personal space of people. Do you know what I mean? That means, I don't know, but when I was in Iran, it was like I said in a previous lecture, like, I was in this grade 1 to 12 were all, I was in grade 4, but grade 1 to 12, all of them were in one recess. And any moment anybody just did anything, do you understand? It was as if it was a signal. You understand? That means what has happened is like, how do I say it? It's like there's boundaries, and the future generations forget their boundaries and they become so soft that at some point you're like, yo, man, the future generations, if they like Jello, they should just eat themselves. What I'm sorry, what I'm saying there is that the nature of man's value system is deteriorating as the generations go by, in the sense that people don't really know how to value themselves because there's an information overload. Like, that's one way, I guess, to see it. So, anyways, here it says philosophical insight intensity is often mistaken for rejection when it is really the force of reverence unmet. Okay, I read that. Awareness result recognizing this truth. This turns conflict into communion and criticism into dialogue with love. See, guys, I mean, even if you don't know what to do, like, simplify yourself. Anytime you find yourself in a situation too complex to handle, just make yourself maybe like 20% simpler and wonder, like, okay, now what is the value? See, as a human being, yes, in front of your eyes, you're just a physical entity in a physical world, but behind your eyes, your values shift in accordance to the relationship of your concept of you to the context of you. Okay, and when I say be a simpler person, that means shift your intensity of the context of the concept you're being, or if moments when you're wrong, be strong enough to, in some sense, be like, okay, this concept is not adequate. There's flaws in it. You know what I mean? This concept of self I have even could be flawed. You know what I mean? So, anyways, then we go to temporal shame, 14th emotion, hidden emotion. Definition: shame towards past versions of the self. Scenario: a woman deletes her old blogs and hides her younger photos, cringing at who she used to be. Yeah, I think, in the current era, when you look at Instagram and you wonder about, like, how are these women going to feel when they get older? But it's not just that, it's also me, in the sense of, like, I'm smoking cigarettes, for example, you know, and it's like I'm gonna feel the shame of it in the future. That why did I do that, right? But at the same time, that's the thing, that sometimes moments go forward regardless of how perfect they could be behind your eyes. It's just, this is it. This is how it's happening. It doesn't mean you can't change. You can, but there's also patterns and habits and deeper psychology at work. So it says philosophical insight. This shame reflects difficulty with inner integration. The ego prefers amputation over acceptance. Wow, that means you might change your identity, but actually you should have accepted something about how your past identity. You know? So do you know what this means? This means that, for example, okay, all these women on OF, okay, um, uh, it's like at some point they're just gonna look back and be like, okay, I was younger then. I was, more naive then, you know. But it's important to acknowledge when you make a mistake. I remember hearing someone say something so profound. They said, the person asked everybody, and they were like, yo, do you know what the difference between a smart and stupid person is? And everybody was kind of like waiting for that person's answer. And you know what they said? A smart person learns from their mistake the first time. And so we human beings, just because maybe we don't learn from one of our mistakes the first time, you know, and yes, it is true we are in a sort of attention obsessed economy, self-obsessed economy, like what happens to, let's say, a young woman's psychology when, like, thousands of men pay her for her appearance. Do you know, she's going to destabilize her psyche, and she's not gonna care for attention, pretty much. I think this is important to consider, that some doors should not be opened, and at the same time don't dehumanize yourself. That means I noticed I was becoming dehumanized, and I gave a talk, and I'm like, everybody, that likes me, forget me, I'm not important. The point of it is the truth of the whole situation we're in. Do you understand? So I kind of became conscious of this, right? That it's like, yo, man, I'm just some human being here, just giving feedback to the human species, and I still have problems, that some people compliment, I'm like, what language are they speaking? I think most men feel that way, actually. But anyways, guys, the moment I said that, the viewers went from 4 to 1, but that's okay. You know, accept your emotions, folks. That's the point. Like, understand your emotions. Ancestral love, 15. The 15th emotion. Definition: a deep mythic loyalty to family, lineage, or homeland. Scenario: a man tears up listening to old Persian poetry, though he grew up in Canada and barely speaks. Okay. Um, this is kind of like, I guess, my parents' generation. Philosophical insight: the soul remembers more than the conscious mind. Love can flow through blood, song, and symbol. Awareness result. So, guys, this doesn't explain why I had an affinity for the Andromeda galaxy. I don't think my ancestors were from the Andromeda galaxy. Awareness result: accepting this opens a gateway to identity rooted not just in the personal but in the mythic, a source of grounding and belonging. Conclusion: why these emotions matter. These are not flaws or mental issues. They are advanced internal systems of emotional signaling, alerting us to deeper truths. Most people never recognize them because they don't fit the tidy categories of happiness, sadness, or anger. Yet, by learning their language, we become more human, not less. We access a depth of empathy, authenticity, and presence that elevates every relationship and decision. In a world overwhelmed by data, emotional self awareness becomes the ultimate intelligence. Okay, now, guys, I was expecting way more advanced. I'm gonna ask it. Think even far into the future of humanity, and okay. So I'm asking AI, think up to 10,000 years from now, right? And in some sense, what hidden emotions will be in the evolution in regards to the future in accordance to AI. 10 future emotions humans may experience in 10,000 years. So, chrono compassion definition: empathy felt not just for present beings, but for past and future selves across time. Yeah, I actually experienced, this was years ago. I gave a talk on it. I felt like I was somewhere else simultaneously as I'm here. And I kind of felt that this is before, now my views are different. I don't have these views. But there was a time where I felt that life is not just like you have a past self and a future self, but there is horizontal selves. You know what I mean? Or how do I say it? There's parallel selves. And I thought, what if, like, there's parallel versions of this exact world, and I'm the parallel version in this world that has to be like this. And maybe I needed to be shy in this parallel realm, so all my other selves and parallel selves didn't need to be. I had this thought at some point, but now it's completely different because now the system admin is the main point of reality. So it says, example, feeling love and sorrow simultaneously for a war victim from 3,000 years ago and a child yet unborn in 7,000 AD. Why it emerges. As collective memory and time consciousness expand through AI, quantum networks, or spiritual awakening, beings may feel emotionally responsible across timelines. Philosophical insight. Time becomes morally alive. You're no longer just in time, you are for time. Then we go to the next in an emotion, ontological humility. Definition: a reverent emotional response to realizing the limits of one's reality model. A reverent emotional response to realizing the limits of one's reality. Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. This is kind of, I guess, I think maybe these talks might kind of be sharing this emotion. Example: a post-human AI human hybrid encounters a form of existence that completely defies logic and collapses into respectful awe and silence. Why it emerges. Advanced beings will experience realities far beyond their frameworks. Emotional software must adapt to the unknown. Philosophical insight. It is no longer shameful to not understand, it is holy. Then we go to cosmic belonging. Definition: a feeling of intimate connectedness to the entire cosmos, not as an abstraction, but as kin. Example: a child on Mars weeps because they feel the pulse of the galaxy as their family heartbeat. Oh, somebody get that child a Mars bar. Why it emerges. With planetary migration and deeper cosmological understanding, identity may no longer be species based, but existence based. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing if humans get to that sense of emotion. But I think there are humans now that experience that. Philosophical insight: the universe stops being, in quotations, out there, it becomes the body of one's larger self. Four, meta loyalty. It says definition. The speaker needs to drink water. Guys, hold on, please. Just give me a second. Whew. All right, meta loyalty. An emotional commitment to beings or values you've never met across species, timelines, or reality. Yeah, exactly. My kind of loyalty to the advanced civilization, I guess it is a sort of meta loyalty. In other words, after the physical event of now. Excuse me, the physical experience of now. Example: someone feels unshakable loyalty to the key, in quotation, keepers of harmony in a parallel civilization they only glimpsed in dream state AI simulation. Why it emerges. In a hyper-connected multiverse, allegiance to principles of metaphysical rules replace allegiance to nations or tribes. Yeah, for human beings, in previous lectures I was saying that, like, the idea was that they become stewards of of the planet and then the cosmos. That means we treat the planet as alive and we start caring for it. It's like it doesn't, like, even though the planet we treat it as an object, And I'm not saying that it's alive, but I'm saying if we did treat it alive, it would probably be better. That means imagine if you threw your trash on the ground and the planet was like, "What are you doing?" Like you heard like some loud voice and you freaked out and you're like, you know what I mean? And you're like, "What is that? Whose voice is that?" And the voice is like, "I'm the planet's voice." And you're like, "Is there speakers in the sky?" Philosophical insight: duty transcends blood and borders. It becomes archetypal. Do you know what that means? That means we get an emotion of a role in the future. And yeah. All right, guys. I need quick. Actually, okay. Let me finish reading this. Why it emerges. I read that. Philosophical insight. No, I read that. Okay. So, guys, I need a quick 5 minute breather. I'll be back. Yeah. Okay. Back to it. All right. So, guys, there's five more, and there's more I'm going to say. But, anyways, let's keep going. Quantum regret. Definition: grief for infinite versions of oneself that choose other paths in alternate timelines. Grief for infinite versions of oneself that choose other paths in alternate timelines. Example: a future consciousness glimpses a version of them who became a healer instead of a conqueror and more. Yeah, it's in some sense having an emotion of the decisions that you're in a parallel, if this theory finds holds true of parallel universe theory, it's like there's infinite versions of you, and what are they choosing? It's so fascinating because right now you're wondering about the emotion of one version of you, right? But imagine if there were versions of you and they had their own emotions and they in some ways made decisions that you didn't approve of. Why it emerges. Advanced beings may access quantum states or parallel lives, leading to existential accountability. Philosophical insight. Responsibility is no longer about what you did, but what could have been. I feel hyper empathy synchrony, the sixth one. Definition: a simultaneous embodied feeling of collective emotional states across thousands or millions of minds. Millions of minds. Guys, I'm going to turn off the music and read this again. A simultaneous embodied feeling of collective emotional states across thousands or millions of minds. Example: a future mystic feels joy, pain, and confusion all at once because they are emotionally linked with a million beings in a planetary ritual. Why it emerges with neural linking. Emotional states could become shared bandwidths. So it says why it emerges with neural linking, emotional states could become shared. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So right now we're feeling our own emotions. Imagine humans, advanced humans in the future, they're going to feel everybody's emotions, for example. Philosophical insight. Emotional individuality becomes obsolete. Whoa, we feel as a species, not just as selves. Yeah. Seven, echo silence. Definition: a serene emotional state triggered by the absence of psychic noise, a rare silence in a connected civilization. Example: a being cries during a moment of true silence after centuries of constant inner stream data flow. Okay, do you know what this means, guys? This means that right now, the way I'm experiencing my inner realms, I tend to see, like, let's say, sometimes one film, or it could be more, um, like a cinematic experience of my own mind. I'm a, as they say, like a visual thinker. But now it's astonishing to me because I ask myself, what if I was in as my awareness was watching like 100 screens, 100 films at the same time, and what would be the emotion of that? What would be how would the awareness organize that experience? Okay, but anyways, here it says. Why it emerges. Future consciousness may be overloaded with signals and absence will become sacred. Yeah, it could be true that your life is so overloaded that if you stop, you break down because you understand it could be freer. So it says philosophical insight. True silence will not be emptiness, it will be presence without interference. 8. Dimensional nostalgia. Definition: longing for a reality or dimension that may no longer be accessible or even remembered clearly. Example: a post Earth traveler feels an ache for something they can't name, possibly Earth or even the concept of soil. Guys, I'll give you a better example. I'm going to turn off the music for this. I'll give you a way better, like a better example. So, I don't know if people know this, but I guess many astronomers do, that it is considered that our Milky Way galaxy will collide, I think in 4 billion years or something. It's going to collide with the Andromeda galaxy. So these galaxies are being pulled together. Okay. Now, what's bizarre is that when these two galaxies cluster up, right? They kind of like collide. All the other galaxies around them is gonna be pushed away. Okay. Not just based on them colliding, but just based on space expanding faster than light. Um, and you may wonder how space can expand, but science doesn't has shifted from classical physics in regards to space being a static. Okay, so space is not being treated like a container by physicists. Okay, nowadays. Newton was different, but anyways, so the example is, imagine we as human beings, okay, like your genetical somehow memory or whatever, like it's like you have a nostalgia. I mean, sorry, this isn't a good example because the Earth is colliding with Andromeda. Okay, imagine we were in some other galaxy. Okay, pretty much. I'm okay. Maybe I can say that the two galaxies collide, and it's like two old school CDs like intersecting one another. Okay, but the nostalgia for when our galaxy wasn't, it was a relationship with Andromeda. They call it Milka Meta or Andro Milky. I think the Andromeda galaxy just is out of milk, guys. I think that's the reason. That's the true scientific reason why these galaxies are going to collide. Okay. Ninth, existential maturity. Definition: a deep, peaceful sadness combined with responsibility when realizing the weight of being conscious of the universe. Example: an elder galactic ambassador quietly weeps after signing a peace treaty that saves two species but destroys a third ecosystem. All right. So at least according to AI, there's going to be emotional, galactic, uh, ambassador elders in the future. Why it emerges. With power comes pain. Did Uncle Ben lie to Spider-Man? Like, with power comes pain. Future leadership will require emotional strength unimaginable. I mean, I guess we can imagine that, we require emotional. It's like we can imagine unimaginable emotional philosophical insight. Wisdom means learning to carry sorrow without collapsing on. Yeah, sometimes wisdom is accepting how reality is, regardless of what you want it to be. You know, sometimes to me, it's life is not about like becoming knowledgeable or becoming this or that. It's to understand what's happening, and in order to understand it, there requires acceptance. 10. Reverence for the ordinary. Definition: a future emotional state where the most basic experiences, breathing, warmth, silence, trigger overwhelming gratitude. Example. Oh, wait, read it again. Reverence for the ordinary, a future emotional state where the most basic experiences, breathing, warmth, silence, trigger overwhelming gratitude. After living through seven civilizations, example, after living through seven civilizations, a being is brought to tears by the scent of firewood or the texture of bread. Probably a Frenchman. Why it emerges. In a hyper complex world, simplicity becomes holy. Philosophical insight. Enlightenment may not be in the stars, but in the taste of water on a tired tongue. What an incredible sentence. Final thought. These emotions are speculative, but grounded in plausible directions of human evolution. As the species becomes more self aware, multidimensional, and ethically responsible, emotions will not vanish, they will multiply, complexify, and in some cases become sacred disciplines. Whew, okay. You know, guys, when it comes to emotions, now I finished reading the AI part. Do you know what it's like? I think every different human beings have different relationships with how they even process emotions, how they even notice emotions. You could be a human being that you've avoided your emotions, you know, and, AI robots are going to be like, why, human being? We can't do that, But at the same time, there are emotions that sometimes I've had that validate or invalidate my subjective self. I'll give you an example. I've given a talk on the advancement of civilization. Imagine I felt it was a good talk, and then I'm walking by somewhere, you know, and then somebody, I don't know, let's say some conflict happens, right? And so I'm functioning under the emotion of my previous I like I'm functioning under the emotion of the previous identity in the previous moment, but then suddenly a new moment comes that makes me feel like invalidated. Do you know, so I'm saying that sometimes, our emotions and their relationship with ourselves, and it's kind of like thinking like, okay, am I getting an emotion because of the type of self I'm being, or is there an emotion because what I expect behind my eyes doesn't align to what is actually in front of my eyes? And I am not like sitting here trying to act like some sort of emissary of emotional wisdom. For me, I don't know. There, life has gone up and down. There's been moments where I've trembled, and then there's been moments where I felt like as solid as a mountain. as strong, as stable as a mountain, but these situations change, and what's really fascinating is like, how they say, when you understand the game, then you kind of can start enjoying it. Pretty much people enjoy what they understand. It's kind of like when you understand that the game of being a human being in this world is that you're actually an awareness to a physical self in a physical world, but simultaneously various concepts of self come and go in accordance to, they not just come and go, they come and animate. Do you know what that means? That means like, when I went to the store to buy like a bottle of water, right? That was like, the thought came then, it motivated me then, there was a sense of self then, there was a certain unique values, and then I moved on to the next moment, and then another set of values with a new conceptual, I guess, viability of self. Okay. And what I'm trying to say is that I think as our species ends up becoming more mature, emotionally mature, it's another way of saying we as a species start grounding ourselves, and pretty much there's going to be two common denominators that all human beings have. One is that you're a human among a member of the human species. The other is that we all are like an awareness where reality is happening, like within, or awareness. Okay, so it's kind of like saying, yes, the bodies look different, but they're fundamentally the human design, right? We're all humans. Of course, DNA is different, and the ideas that human beings have on themselves, on their world, how they conceptualize themselves, how they contextualize themselves, right, change. But the awareness to form is the same for all of us. Do you understand? That means awareness to shape, like everybody has an awareness to shape, even though the shapes are different, but the awareness to the shape is like a common denominator. Okay, so I'm saying we are united by our physical format. Believe it or not, I find that we are all, warriors of humanity. Not just, a warrior doesn't mean just you fight with the sword. You just you care for the world, pretty much. Okay, because you're in it. You're in it now, and there will come a day where you will have to say your goodbyes to everything. you know but if you've lived well, at least you smile and leave, and that's a mercy of God. you know um like that quote that says, when the child is born, um the child cries. When the person is born, the child cries, and the parents kind of, what do you call it, the parents and everybody in the world is laughing, is smiling, like happy that the child is here, even though the child enters the world crying. Okay, right? Now the second part of the quote says that when the man leaves this world, when that human being leaves this world, the world will be crying, but they will be gracefully smiling. Because to be honest, I've thought about it many ways, and I'm like, okay, what is a noble way to be dismissed out of this realm, where your last glimpse of it was like the question, did I do all that I could? Did I? Right? And if the answer is yes, that smile is kind of a victory of a lifetime. But if the answer is no, then we defeated our potential by never trying it, right? You're not just limited to your thoughts now and your emotions now, or what people say outside of you. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm saying that what is going on here is a deeper intelligent event. Okay, and it's this intelligence that cannot define itself, but excuse me, it cannot know itself, but is using everything to try to know itself. There's been nights that I've had emotions that I've known are not from me. Or not just some nights. I mean, I'm going to go to an earlier example. I remember me, my twin brother, I think maybe we were like, again, like 15, 14. And then like 15, I have a twin brother, same age. But I also have a cousin that's also the same age as me, right? His name, anyways. And us three, I remember we watched the movie Godfather. And after that, we all just were acting like the Godfather. It was as if like a new archetype and a new emotional behavior had access to our mind, and we were all just looking at each other like, show me respect, show me respect. What they don't say, guys, it's really funny being raised as a Persian kid. I think it's funny being raised anywhere, actually. But anyways, so I asked AI in this lecture to tell us emotions that we're not aware of that we're having. I think it did a good job. But I think what it's all implying is that the whole point of it is honesty. I think honesty is brings emotional alignment. That means it's all about honesty. It's a deep rooted honesty. That means it's like, if you're wondering about what is the most advanced way to live, it's like, if we say to live in the truest way is the most advanced way, then one has to be true to themselves. Now, most people, because their ego wants to be something in the future, they sometimes ignore what they actually are now. Okay. This happened to me in the sense that, you know I was just, in my mind, I was like, why isn't anybody talking about advancement of civilization? Like, I had my identity kind of linked to that idea. It's like I found something that I concluded it's obviously the logical outcome here. Like, it's what's going to happen, right? But it's like, how is it going to happen? Why hasn't it happened? um but anyways, it's like I've had a certain emotion. Pretty much, it's like in the evolution of the human species right now, people kind of have a sort of self obsession because of survival. So people are like, yo man, what about my thoughts? What about my emotions? Like, if you ask people what their problems are, they center around themselves. But how many people are wondering about problems that are beyond themselves, that have a greater context than just your awareness? Like, that's the cool thing of being in a world. Because, to be honest, if the physical world wasn't here and we weren't physical, everybody would be lost in their own world, technically, right? So we need existence to be a common denominator for all the different experiential activation points in the system, experiential nodes in the system. There has been times where I've wondered, okay, what would my future self feel? And a part of me is like, I hope it's better than what I'm feeling now. But the mind is very fascinating. You can get emotions of like your physical self. You can look at yourself in the mirror and get an emotion. Like after that car accident I had, I saw pictures of like my injuries, you know, and I got emotional, you know. But you can also have an emotion for abstraction. Now check this out. Why? This is actually a very interesting point. Why is it someone sees the movie Titanic, knows they're all actors, knows that it's fiction, but yet they cry? Because there is something real, even, underneath even what the fiction is, right? It's as if how many people, when Gandalf, like, said, "You shall not pass," and fell, how many people in the movie theaters were like, "No, Gandalf, no," you know, you know. So what I'm saying is that even abstract scenarios can give you emotions. Like right now there's human beings and they're like, "Yo man, if I'm it's like I want to be a trillionaire." They saw someone like in like a Bugatti and like a helicopter, like they had a helipad or something, and they're like, "Yo, that," it's like it's not, they're extracting an emotion from a subjective circumstance and wondering why right now what they are isn't doesn't have that emotion, right? But I think this is very interesting because what's motivating me to give these talks is not how I feel now, it's how I feel about the future. Do you understand what I'm saying? That means something more important than how I feel now is my mind's ability to fathom the future and have that feeling, right? Do you know what that means? That means all of us can think like, "Yo, we're gonna get old and die." Like, how depressing. And do you know what I mean? But how can we have that emotion? We haven't died yet. The mind is envisioning a scenario that hasn't happened yet that scenario is still real to us, and it emotionally translates. You see what I'm saying? So I don't know, I find that very interesting. But to be honest, if we have this argument that the soul is the secret of God and everything comes back to the seat of awareness, then it could also be that why we are emotional or why we have certain emotions are not just based on our mind's ability, they are commands of the system admin. You see, ladies and gentlemen, you right now are think you're a thought identifying that with the deeper idea that you're a soul. Okay, this is perhaps how it's happening, but the soul is not you. Now, excuse me, let me rephrase. Your idea, your subjective ownership of this awareness that is the secret of the system admin is not you. The soul is you. You are a soul, but and the soul is a mystery. But I'm saying the way what you think has a soul is not you. Okay, do you know? So I'm saying that it's like my body can't be my soul because I'm aware of the body, my thought changing. My thoughts can't be the soul because I'm aware of them changing. But this awareness that is aware that I've been changing, it's like the awareness to change that doesn't change is like the soul that nothing in a changing world can. It's a secret to a changing world. How the hell? Like, excuse me. How can you even know it? That means it's like, why do you think all these yogis are like, "Yo man, when you sit silent and still in the Himalayas for 3 years, 3 months and 3 days, you realize your awareness." Whoa, I realized that like when I woke up in the morning. It's like the point is not just that your awareness, it's like, how does this awareness activate in a way that activates the greater potentials of reality? For me, it was as if the spirituality of yoga and Vedanta and meditation was stripping away the beauty, brilliance, and how spiritual it is to be human. Some people think to be spiritual means you're not human, you're something else. Being human is one of the most advanced spiritual things that can happen. It's like, I don't know what's more spiritual than that. Being a self in an unknown world. It's like, you want a bigger spiritual experience than realizing it's an unknown viewer in an unknown place. I don't know how it can get more spiritual than that. It can get more. I guess, let's say, it can get more important than that, right? If you realize that what you are given doesn't belong to you. This might sound strange, but it's like, I don't know if it's the soul, like your life is an amana, in Arabic, the Arabic term for it, which means it's like it's a responsibility. It's like they gave you this experience of this world, and it's something you need to take care of. You need to be responsible. In the same way, if somebody gave you a car, you need to be responsible of how you drive it, right? Anyways, where I was going with this is that if all knowledge is rooted in the if all noun like measured knowledge is rooted in an unknown verb, is rooted in an unknown awareness to all the stuff in it that it considers known, you know because to be aware of something and knowing something are also different. But I'm pretty much saying it's like, um, I feel that the awareness is not the emotion. That means, right now we're realizing, for example, we're not just objects. We're realizing we're not just subjects. I think we will also realize we're not our emotions. And how all of this happens is that if you consider that, like, you, okay, think of it this way: you're born, you live a lifetime. Now, during that lifetime, you had your view on it, right? You had your first person view on your lifetime, right? But imagine there's an awareness that's greater than you, that is living at the same time. uh, and in some sense, I'm pretty much saying there are blind spots, there are things in reality right now that the human being may not be aware of, but they are significant to the system admin. For example, some person may be like, yo, man, why is that evil person, not like, why don't you destroy, like, why is that evil person still like in power? Why did that evil person win and why did the good person lose? Like, there is this idea sometimes, but you never know if the system admin gives that evil person power and money because their grandchild is going to be a saint that revolutionizes that evil. You don't know, right? So what I'm saying is, this is the cool thing about acknowledging the system admin, because it means that human beings are trying to fathom this existential system in an imaginable way, correct? Right now, what am I doing? Like, what is our species doing? We're like using our ability to fathom reality, to contemplate reality. So I'm saying humans are limited to an imaginable processing of reality. They can, so we can only notice the imaginable. Okay, the imaginable administration of the system, but it could be unimaginably happening. There could be protocols or systems or programs running in this world right now that are way beyond what the human perception can contain. Do you see? And there has been, thoughts. I've had thoughts of like, okay, like right now I'm using AI. Could it be in the future that I want like my, the content to suddenly be able to shift the content of my mind? Like in the future, do I want to put a chip in my brain? And believe it or not, years ago in my lectures, they had come a command to me that technology should not go through the walls of the kingdom of the biological body. So I still feel that all those people developing chips to put in like people's brains, so in the future, what they're going to have to pay a membership fee to access intelligence. You know what I mean? Like if you don't pay your membership fee, it's like, oh my god, that person's IQ dropped from 200 to 170 because they didn't make the payment. You know, but I'm saying that pretty much it's going to happen through wave technology. So you're going to go in a booth and brain somehow waves, and the brain being a sort of wave generating thing is going to, it's not going to, you don't need to freaking connect the USB to your body. You know what I mean? Like, can you imagine in the future the person's like, yeah, man, I don't remember everything in my past, but let me just connect this USB to my bicep, you know? It's like, oh yeah, man, all those memories, in detail, full high resolution color. Anyways, thank you for listening so far. This was a heavy lecture. I feel like I just pushed a boulder, you know, but it's the planet. A part of me is incredibly, it's not just in my inner realms. I've just in happy situations to the future of mankind. I have seen chaos. I have seen, in my science fiction, there's chapters I've written, the lost children of cyberspace. That's going to be a very effed up era, you know when human beings cannot, because human beings have preferred a controllable simulated life filled with more information, they actually lose sight of their natural lives, and there's going to be natural beings born in cyber simulations, and it's going to take them a while to realize that they were never that reality. One thing we know, that consciousness seems to be being trained by is world waking up from versions of the world, through, I guess, and the entrance of novelty in regards to the depth of the world being different. That means, like before, it's like you were someone who'd never entered the ocean, like stepped into the ocean, right? And so you saw only the surface of the ocean, but when you put your foot in the water, you suddenly experienced there was a depth there, right? I feel the ocean is just a metaphor for our thoughts, emotions, and perceptions, you know anyways, I honor you for listening to this. Thank you. And let us not forget greatness ever. That means there's some emotion in me that says, imagine actually experiencing. Imagine if humans become victorious against epistemic entropy. They become victorious against climate crises. They become victorious against, a kind of being divided and, conquered by their own civil wars of nationalism. You know, and eventually imagine that time where children are born and you're given a document, like you don't just have, a birth certificate, or how do I say it, it's not like you just have a passport from a nation. You have this document that says you are a member of the human species from Earth, and every human being you have seen, they are a member of your species. Believe it or not, they are your pride, joy, and sorrow. So all of us are each other's pride, joy, and sorrow. What I mean by that is that, not that it's concluding to sorrow, in the sense that if there was nothing else, if all the solar system was empty, it would just be us. And guess what? It is just us now. You know, And I feel once we reach a certain emotional mature threshold as a species, I think that's when God um, may allow for human experience, or in some sense, maybe beings on Earth can notice higher planes. But ultimately, the aim is that the system admin is beyond the simulated testing zone. And as you are conscious within this divine surveillance state, pretty much you either trust life or fear it. And sometimes it might not be in your control. You might have an idea you're a brave person, and suddenly in a scenario realize you're not brave. But ultimately, I think if you don't trust life, you can't understand it. And that trust, if you trust the original causal position of it, well, the original causal position is not the effect position in a dualistic context. So it's as if trust, like you may not trust people, you may not trust many things in this simulation, you may not even trust the simulation, but you cannot not trust the original power that the simulation came from. So, anyways, thank you for listening. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. A'udhu billah shaitan rajim. May God protect us from the cursed one and unnecessary ignorance. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. It's everything knows where it has come from. It's just maybe we've kind of forgotten. Rabbi Gfirli. My Lord, forgive me. My Lord, forgive my species for all the sins that they are conscious and unconscious of. For we are your creation. We were created by the greatest. Our potential is greater than our defeat. Than our potential defeat. Our potential victory is greater than our potential defeat. And I personally believe to be aware of the system admin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or just the notion that God is beyond form and has no equivalent in the realm. Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. May God guide us to the direct path. May the most advanced guide us to the most, in the most advanced way, guide us to the most advanced. Pretty much what it is I'm, I'm, I'm seeing simulated beings, and they originated, which means they have a connection to the original, and they have, the simulation has nowhere else to go to other than to return to the original. Do you know what that means? That means a human being may go to different places or different planes, but the totality of creation itself returns to the original power. So it's like you can travel to different places in the simulation, but the simulation itself returns to the original. And for Muslims, that is known as the end of days, Qiyamah, and Islam is super fascinating in its description of it. At some point, it says when the sky begins to crack, it's like the simulation returns to the origin. Thank you for listening. And guys, every time you have heard on media or anywhere the term La ilaha illallah, it just means there is no God but God. It means no human can own God. You know? Do you know? That means no human being can say, I know this is what God wants. Do you understand? Because that's them acting like God. So when you see, for example, let's say extreme scenarios where violence is being justified in God's name, you know. The question should be, how can you act upon that justification? Are you acting like God? Do you understand? That means just because there is revelation and human beings are reading it doesn't mean human beings know, can accurately understand revelation. I have this firm belief that the Holy Quran, I treat it as source code from the system admin beyond the simulated reality. But I also firmly believe that this is not just a normal book, that it is in some sense, first, you're called towards it, and at the same time, it doesn't mean a person can read the Holy Quran. It doesn't mean they have understood all of it. Just because you understand the language doesn't mean you understand the significance of the meaning. Okay? So this is something human beings have to be very careful. That means, for example, let's say in ancient texts, in ancient holy texts, let's say even in Islam, back in the day, I mean, reality, the context of the world was that all nations were slavers. So that's why at that time you see taught, stuff being said about slavery, you know. But the point of it, I'm trying to make, is that a person can't say, yo, this book, this, excuse me, a person can't say, I interpret the source code so perfectly that it means like I can have a slave. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right? I'm saying that some things, the whole point of Islam is the submission of ego. When you have seen people on media acting wild and savage and violent, they are not people who have submitted their ego. Because the whole point of being a Muslim is that there is a higher power. We can't act like it. Only the Prophet could. Only the prophets could, because they had a direct relationship with the system admin. Do you understand? That means it's like, what was it, like Moses, like God directly spoke to Moses, you know. And in Christianity it's a little bit complex. I'm not Christian, but I think if a person wants to consider like Christ is God, so if Christ was receiving revelation, does that mean Christ was revealing something he already knew to himself? You know what I'm saying? This is why I'm saying that we got to be, not that in Islam, Prophet Isa, Jesus Christ, Prophet Christ, is a very advanced being. That means that if you go ask, I think every Muslim, all prophets are held in way superior regard than even ourselves, you know. But the point of it is, beginning from Abraham and concluding with, excuse me, beginning with Prophet Abraham, peace be upon him, and concluding with Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that, hey, simulated beings in a simulation, truth is not in the simulation. You can worship yourself. You can worship others. You can worship objects. You can worship subjects. You can worship future realities or whatever. But at some point, it is not in the room, in this room. That means truth is administering reality beyond reality. So when human beings try to define truth, it becomes problematic. Anyways, sorry guys, I was ending the talk and I ended up just sharing all this. Rapid fairly. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Thank you for listening.